If you are a man over 60 and your erections have become less firm, less predictable, or simply slower to respond than they used to, you may have started asking yourself questions you rarely say out loud. Maybe your morning erections are happening less often. Maybe your desire is still there, but your body does not respond as reliably. Or perhaps you have noticed lower energy at the same time, and now you are wondering whether your testosterone is falling, your circulation is getting weaker, or your sexual health is simply declining with age. For many men, that uncertainty is more troubling than the symptom itself, because a weaker erection can quietly raise a much bigger fear. Is this the beginning of a permanent decline? Will it keep getting worse? And is there something you are eating every day that may be making the problem worse without you realizing it? This is where the conversation about fruit becomes confusing. You may have seen claims that certain fruits can dramatically raise testosterone, while others supposedly suppress hormones, damage blood vessels, or weaken erections. Here is the important part. A single fruit is very unlikely to determine your sexual health by itself. Bananas do not automatically lower testosterone. Grapes do not automatically cause erectile dysfunction. And no fruit, no matter how nutritious, can reliably restore strong erections on its own. But that does not mean your food choices are irrelevant. The real issue is often not simply which fruit you eat, but how that fruit is prepared, how much you consume, and what is happening in the rest of your metabolic and vascular health. There is a big difference between eating a serving of whole fruit and drinking several servings as concentrated juice. There is also a difference between fresh fruit and fruit packed in heavy syrup, or between a small portion of dried fruit and repeatedly eating large handfuls because it seems healthier than candy. Those patterns can matter, especially if you already have high blood sugar, insulin resistance, excess weight, high blood pressure, or elevated cholesterol. And this becomes especially important after 60 because an erection is not controlled by testosterone alone. Let me explain what is actually happening. Your nerves first have to send the right signals. Then the arteries supplying erectile tissue need to relax and allow more blood to enter. One of the chemical signals involved in that process is nitric oxide, which helps blood vessels widen. You can think of your arteries like small highways. When those highways respond well, blood can move in efficiently. When vascular function becomes less responsive, firmness may take longer to develop, may be harder to maintain, or may feel less reliable than before. Hormones matter too. Testosterone can influence sexual desire and several aspects of sexual function, but a weaker erection does not automatically prove that your testosterone is low. Blood vessel health, nerve function, medications, diabetes, sleep, stress, cardiovascular health, and other factors may also be involved. That is why focusing on one so-called bad fruit can distract you from the bigger picture. In this video, we are going to separate the exaggerated claims from what is actually useful. You will learn which forms and portions of fruit may deserve more attention after 60, which fruit choices may fit better into a circulation-friendly eating pattern, and why some of the most popular warnings about fruit and testosterone do not tell the whole story. We will also cover the warning signs that mean weaker erections deserve a proper medical check rather than another dietary experiment. Because one change in sexual function is not a diagnosis. And it does not mean your best years are behind you, but it is information from your body. And once you understand what that information may be pointing toward, you can make smarter choices about what to eat, what to monitor, and what to do next. Here is the important distinction most men have never been told. An erection is not created by testosterone alone. Before firmness can develop, several systems have to work together in the right sequence. Sexual stimulation begins with nerve signals. Those signals help trigger the release of nitric oxide inside the blood vessels supplying the penis. Nitric oxide acts like a message telling the smooth muscle around those arteries to relax. As the arteries open, more blood can enter the erectile tissue and pressure begins to build. You can think of those blood vessels like small highways. When the highways are flexible and responsive, blood can move in more easily. When the vessels become less responsive, firmness may take longer to develop, may feel weaker, or may become harder to maintain. The thin layer of cells lining your blood vessels is called the endothelium. A healthy endothelium helps regulate blood flow and nitric oxide signaling. After 60, protecting this system becomes especially important because conditions such as high blood pressure, diabetes, elevated cholesterol, smoking, excess weight, and physical inactivity can gradually affect vascular function. This does not mean one weaker erection proves you have a circulation problem, but when the change becomes persistent, It is worth looking at the bigger picture instead of simply blaming age or testosterone. And that brings us to the first fruit-related habit worth reconsidering. Not because the fruit itself is dangerous, but because of what may have been added to it. Fruit packed in heavy syrup or heavily sweetened canned fruit can still look healthy because the label says fruit. The concern is the added sugar. If heavily sweetened fruit becomes a regular habit, especially in large portions, it may make blood sugar and weight management more difficult in some people. And here is where the connection to erectile health becomes more important. The issue is not that one serving of syrup-packed fruit suddenly lowers testosterone. The issue is the long-term metabolic environment. Persistently high blood sugar can damage blood vessels and nerves over time. Diabetes is an important risk factor for erectile dysfunction, partly because it can affect both the circulation bringing blood into erectile tissue and the nerves carrying sexual signals. So the practical lesson is not that you must eliminate canned fruit. Look at what it is packed in. Fruit packed in water or without added sugar may be a better everyday option than fruit sitting in heavy syrup. Fresh or frozen whole fruit can also make it easier to get fiber along with the natural sugars already present in the fruit. Now compare that with a fruit that may fit well into a circulation-friendly eating pattern, pomegranate. Pomegranate contains polyphenols, plant compounds studied for their antioxidant effects and their potential role in supporting cardiovascular and blood vessel health. That does not make pomegranate a treatment for erectile dysfunction. It does not replace controlling blood pressure, managing diabetes, staying active, or getting medical care when erectile changes persist. But it can be part of an overall heart-healthy eating pattern. Fresh pomegranate seeds also provide fiber, which slows the eating process and helps make the portion easier to control. If you prefer juice, choose 100% pomegranate juice without added sugar and keep the serving modest. Juice can be consumed much faster than whole fruit, which makes it easy to take in more natural sugar than you realize. Here is what I want you to remember. The useful question is not, which fruit boosts testosterone? It is, which eating pattern better supports the blood vessels, blood sugar, and metabolic health that sexual function depends on? And once you understand that distinction, another common healthy choice deserves a closer look. It is concentrated, sweet, convenient, and many people eat far more of it than they would ever eat in its fresh form. Now we come to one of the easiest foods to underestimate: dried fruit. Dates, raisins, dried apricots, and similar foods are often viewed as healthier alternatives to candy. And in some situations, they can be. But there is an important difference between fresh fruit and dried fruit. When water is removed, the fruit becomes much smaller, while its natural sugars and calories remain concentrated. That means you can eat the equivalent of several servings of fresh fruit very quickly without realizing it. For a man over 60 who is already dealing with diabetes, insulin resistance, excess weight, or elevated triglycerides, large portions may make blood sugar management more difficult. Again, this does not mean dried fruit directly lowers testosterone. The more important issue is the long-term metabolic pattern. Poor glucose control and insulin resistance are associated with vascular and nerve problems that can affect erectile function over time. So dried fruit does not need to be forbidden. Portion size is what matters. A small amount added to a meal is very different from eating several large handfuls as a nightly snack. Now compare that with a fruit that offers something different: watermelon. Watermelon contains an amino acid called citrulline. Inside the body, citrulline can be converted into arginine, which participates in the pathway used to produce nitric oxide. Remember the highway comparison. Nitric oxide helps signal blood vessels to relax and widen, allowing blood to move more efficiently. That makes the citrulline pathway interesting for vascular health. But here is the distinction that matters. Eating watermelon is not the same as taking an erectile dysfunction medication. It should not be presented as a natural replacement for sildenafil or other prescription treatments. It is simply a hydrating whole fruit that can fit into a heart-healthy eating pattern while contributing to overall fluid intake. The next fruit needs even more nuance: bananas. Bananas are sometimes blamed online for causing insulin spikes, suppressing testosterone, or reducing sexual desire. Those claims go much further than the evidence supports. A banana does not automatically lower testosterone, and the tryptophan it contains does not act like an antidepressant medication that interferes with sexual response. However, ripeness and portion size can influence the glucose response. A very ripe banana contains more readily available sugars than a less ripe banana. If you have diabetes or difficulty controlling blood sugar, it may be useful to consider the portion and what you eat with it. Pairing fruit with a meal that also contains protein, healthy fat, or fiber can help make the overall meal more balanced. Now let us look at another fruit that may fit well into that pattern: blueberries. Blueberries are rich in anthocyanins, plant compounds responsible for their dark blue color. These compounds have been studied for their relationship with cardiovascular health, inflammation, and metabolic function. That does not mean blueberries will restore erections or raise testosterone, but supporting cardiovascular and metabolic health also supports the systems that erectile function depends on. A modest serving of blueberries can fit easily into breakfast or a snack without turning the meal into a concentrated source of sugar. And that is the larger lesson. The goal is not to search for one magical fruit. It is to build an eating pattern that supports your circulation, blood sugar, weight, and overall health consistently. If you find this kind of practical, evidence-based explanation useful, subscribe to Healthy After 60 Plus, because there is still one more important distinction we need to make. Some fruits that are often described as dangerous are not necessarily the problem at all. And in the next part, we will separate those exaggerated warnings from the signs that actually deserve medical attention. Now let us deal with another fruit that is often blamed for problems it may not actually be causing: grapes. You may hear claims that conventional grapes expose men to chemicals that disrupt estrogen, suppress testosterone, and gradually weaken erections. That conclusion goes much further than the evidence allows. Grapes themselves are not established testosterone suppressors, and eating them does not mean your hormonal balance is being damaged. The more useful distinction is between whole grapes and concentrated grape products. Whole grapes provide water, fiber, and naturally occurring plant compounds. Grape juice, on the other hand, is much easier to consume quickly, which means you may take in the natural sugar from several servings of fruit in a short period of time. That does not make grape juice dangerous. But if blood sugar, triglycerides, or weight management are already concerns, portion size becomes more important because those factors can influence long-term vascular health and circulation. If pesticide exposure worries you, wash fresh, produce thoroughly, and choose the options that fit your budget and preferences. You do not need to fear an entire fruit because of an exaggerated hormone claim. Now consider kiwi. Kiwi provides vitamin C, fiber, potassium, and several plant compounds that can fit well into an overall heart-healthy eating pattern. You may also hear claims that kiwi protects the cells that make testosterone or lowers cortisol enough to restore male hormone levels. Again, that is too strong. Kiwi is nutritious, but it should not be presented as a testosterone treatment. The better reason to include it is much simpler. A varied diet rich in whole fruits and vegetables can support cardiovascular, digestive, and metabolic health, and those systems all matter for healthy aging. But here is where we need to move beyond fruit completely. Most gradual changes in erection quality are not an emergency. An occasional weaker erection can happen because of fatigue, stress, alcohol, poor sleep, anxiety, or simply not being fully aroused. But if erections become consistently weaker over several weeks or months, especially if morning erections have also changed, it is worth discussing the pattern with a healthcare professional. Persistent erectile changes may be associated with diabetes, high blood pressure, vascular disease, medication effects, hormonal problems, or nerve conditions. That does not mean erectile dysfunction proves that you have heart disease. One symptom by itself does not tell the whole story. But after 60, a persistent change can be a useful reason to review blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, medications, and overall cardiovascular health. There are also certain warning signs you should not ignore. Seek urgent medical care if a sudden change in sexual function occurs together with chest pain, severe shortness of breath, fainting, or symptoms that could suggest a stroke. And if you suddenly develop numbness in the genital or saddle area along with new bladder or bowel control problems, significant leg weakness, or severe back symptoms, seek emergency medical care. Those situations are uncommon, but they should never be dismissed as normal aging. There is also an emotional side to this that many men rarely talk about. A change in erection quality can affect confidence quickly. Some men begin avoiding intimacy because they are afraid their body will not respond. Others quietly assume they are becoming less masculine, less capable, or less desirable. But a change in sexual function does not define your worth, your masculinity, or your future. It is a health signal that deserves understanding, not shame. If protecting your circulation after 60 is something you are working on, type circulation in the comments. And now that we have separated exaggerated fruit warnings from the signs that truly matter, the final step is turning all of this into a practical plan you can actually use. Now let us turn everything we have discussed into a practical plan you can actually use. Step 1. Observe the pattern instead of guessing. For the next 1 or 2 weeks, pay attention to when changes in erection quality appear. Are morning erections becoming less frequent? Is firmness weaker every time or only occasionally? Does the problem seem worse after poor sleep, alcohol, stress, a heavy meal, or several inactive days? Has the change been gradual over months, or did it begin suddenly? Also notice whether anything else has changed at the same time, such as lower sexual desire, unusual fatigue, reduced exercise tolerance, increased thirst, frequent urination, or numbness. You are not trying to diagnose yourself. You are simply collecting information that may help you recognize a pattern and give your healthcare professional a clearer picture if the problem continues. Step 2. Improve the overall eating pattern rather than searching for one miracle fruit. Choose whole fruit most of the time. Fresh or frozen fruit can provide fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds while making portions easier to recognize. If you enjoy pomegranate, fresh seeds can fit well into a balanced diet. Watermelon can contribute hydration and naturally occurring citrulline. Blueberries provide anthocyanins and can be an easy whole fruit addition to breakfast or a snack. And kiwi provides vitamin C, fiber, potassium, and other nutrients without needing to be treated as a testosterone booster. At the same time, be more thoughtful with concentrated forms. Large portions of dried fruit, fruit packed in heavy syrup, and large glasses of juice can make it easier to consume more sugar and calories than you realize. That does not mean you must eliminate them completely. It means portion size, frequency, and your overall metabolic health matter. And remember what we discussed about bananas and grapes. Neither one needs to be feared. A banana does not automatically suppress testosterone, and grapes do not automatically damage your hormones. The bigger dietary pattern matters far more than one individual fruit. Step 3. Look beyond food. If erection quality has been consistently weaker for several weeks or months, especially if morning erections have also changed, it may be worth reviewing the health factors that affect blood flow, nerve function, and sexual health. That may include blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, physical activity, sleep, smoking, medications, and overall cardiovascular health. If low testosterone is a concern, reduced sexual desire, persistent fatigue, loss of strength, or other changes may be worth discussing with a healthcare professional. But do not assume weaker erections prove low testosterone. And do not start hormone products, change medication doses, or stop prescription medications on your own. If any of the urgent warning signs we discussed earlier appear, seek medical care promptly rather than trying another dietary experiment. Here is what I want you to remember. The goal is not to become afraid of fruit. It is to understand what your body is telling you and make choices that support your circulation, metabolic health, and confidence over time. A weaker erection after 60 does not automatically mean your sexual health is disappearing. It does not mean your masculinity is fading. And it does not mean your best years are behind you. Sometimes the next step is improving your daily habits. Sometimes it means getting blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, or another health factor under better control. And sometimes it means having a proper medical evaluation instead of continuing to guess. What matters is that you respond to the signal instead of ignoring it. If this video helped you better understand the connection between food, blood flow, and erectile health, give it a like. And share it with another man over 60 who may be quietly asking the same questions. Better information cannot guarantee perfect health, but it can help you make smarter decisions, protect your independence, and move forward with greater confidence.